Is it too early to think about the 2026 gubernatorial election? Not for those folks you see right there. They've already thrown their hats in the ring. Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond, who thinks a lot about the Department of Education, former Assembly Speaker Tony Atkins, Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, and Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. All of them are ready to go for it. But one of those folks is actually in studio right now to talk a little bit about his aspirations to be the next California governor. Joining me now is California Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond. Superintendent, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for being here, and welcome to Inside the Issues.
Thanks for having me.
It's amazing to see you run for governor, and this is something you've decided about a while ago. You're one of the first people on that list to throw your hat in the ring. Just tell the folks at home, as they're getting to know you a little better,
sure,
why is it you think that you'd be a good governor?
Well, it's an honor, first of all, to serve this state, and I have for the last 17 years as an elected official, and it's a great state, but we've got major challenges. We've got to address homelessness. We have to address the lack of affordable housing and help people earn good wages and address crime. And my career has allowed me to address all of those issues, and I'm prepared to provide innovative solutions to addressing those things. And I'm from this state. I was born and raised in this state. The state was good to me when times were hard. I lost both my parents when I was 6 years old. My mom to cancer, my dad, a Vietnam vet who never came home from the war. And so I was raised by a cousin who I never met until I showed up on her doorstep in a household where we relied on public assistance, free lunch program, food stamps, government cheese. Education was a constant, and it helped me to overcome my humble beginnings, and it's allowed me to be a public servant in this state, and I want to continue serving the people of California.
It's a beautiful story, and I can tell the mission mind that comes along with some of those challenges that you face and overcome largely. Here you are sitting at this desk, ready with a vision for this state. You brought up education, State Superintendent of Public Education here in California. Huge conversations around education. Just talk about how that experience has, in particular, made you the right person for this job, because that's the position you're coming from, that would potentially take you to the governor's mansion.
Well, it's preposterous that we would have a presidential administration that would threaten to get rid of the U.S. Department of Education. Education is the cornerstone and the backbone of our society, and I'm proud of what we've done in this state. We guarantee preschool for every 3- and 4-year-old. We give universal meals to every hungry student and make sure our kids learn to read and give them great supports. But we cannot allow anyone to threaten the Department of Education and to abolish it, and that's not going to happen on our watch. And right now I'm leading a strategy that will allow us to get supports all across the country to block the effort to abolish the Department of Education.
Help people understand what it is the Department of Education does, because I think the way the Trump administration is talking about it is it's making schools on a state level adhere to certain ideological principles that the administration doesn't like. There's conversations on funding, which funds for education comes from the Department of Education, which come locally. Just tell the people about it.
Abolishing the department would mean a loss of $9 billion for the state of California. The U.S. Department of Education administers programs related to special education, for homeless students, for higher education and financial aid. So many important programs, and interprets all the laws that come out of the federal government and how to apply them all across the state. And so we need to strengthen the Department of Education, and we're not going to let the department close. We're going to make sure that funding is constant for students all across this country.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big conversation. The new Secretary of Education, Lynn McMahon, says she does not support abolishing the department, but there's a conversation as to how it might be reshaped. And of course, President Trump has said that he wants to dismantle it entirely. You also mentioned homelessness and crime. I mean, these are big issues. Obviously, it's important to see where your priorities are. What are some of the ideas you have? Some of the things that we're not doing, for instance, with homelessness? Because people watch us, and we have this conversation all the time. We pass these bond measures. We have a lot of money that goes into it, and it feels like the problem gets worse. Sometimes it does, statistically as well.
Obviously, it's a huge challenge. To put it in context, and we've been talking about education, there are 240,000 homeless students in our state that we know of. 10,000 of those students right now are alone and unaccompanied minors who are on the street with no place to go. And so I'm working on a proposal that would give them housing, subsidized housing with wraparound supports to make sure they get to training programs, that they have the ability to get to education, because if we don't serve those homeless youth, they will become homeless adults. The other thing that people don't realize, 40% of those who are homeless are elderly Californians. We failed our elders. We've got to make sure that we provide affordable housing for them. And so they're not making choices between paying rent and paying for their medication. And so these are difficult challenges, but I spent 20 years working with young people who who are homeless and in foster care and building housing programs for them. And I intend to bring those experiences to the governor's mansion, should I be given the opportunity to serve this great state.
Yeah, I appreciate the educational lens. It's obviously something you know well, you understand it well, you're coming from this post. Another issue with homelessness is just one of sheer inventory, right?
Yes.
We have these kinds of regulations that prevent people from constructing, and
Yes.
coming out of the LA fires, there's been a suspension of some of the permitting processes, or
Yes.
at least a relaxing of it, with CEQA, for instance, as well,
Yes.
the environmental regulations. Big issues coming out of these fires. And let's just say you happen to have been governor,
Yes.
as Governor Newsom, in fact, was. When you look at Governor Newsom's
Yes.
job, I'm sure you're looking at it. What was something you think he did well? And
Yeah.
what was something you think that he could have done better?
Well, the governor is very hands-on, and unfortunately, for the last several years, there have been so many disasters, and he's always on the scene, getting information, getting executive orders out, helping us align with FEMA and other programs to get help on the ground. I think he does that quite well. I don't have any criticism of him, but what I would say is, if I'm governor, I'm going to be a lot tougher with the insurance companies. Leading up to these fires, since the fires, so many of them have just said, we're not going to help Californians who've lost their prized possession, their home. But yet they make a lot of money off of our state. We have to hold insurance companies accountable, and they have to be part of the rebuilding effort. It's going to require massive rebuilding to rebuild homes and schools. We've got to make sure that the insurance companies contribute, businesses, foundations, the state government, and the federal government to rebuild the homes for those who've lost them during these fires.
It is a massive rebuilding effort, as you say, Superintendent, and also a conversation on rethinking insurance. And
Yes.
Governor Newsom is doing his part, as
Yes.
we've seen a lot of executive directives from him, and he's also gone to Washington, D.C., soliciting
Yes.
for aid. These conversations come from President Trump, where he has these ideas for these preconditions on the aid. We'll see where that winds up, because that process is playing out. But when
Yeah.
President Trump was here, he was talking about it in terms of voter ID, water
Right.
allocation, et cetera. How would you handle that moment with
Yes.
a president who was saying that disaster aid has to be conditioned upon these particular objectives?
I would remind the president of all the places in the country, not just California, that have experienced disaster in just the last few months. In Florida, in other places in the South, in places that supported President Trump. This is not a partisan issue. This is a place where California will have to work closely with the president, and he needs to work with us to make sure that we have the funds and the proper resources to help those who are recovering and to rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more to talk about, and we're just scratching the surface. But
Yeah.
as people are getting a chance to know you better, and we appreciate you coming in, because that's what we want to do. We want people to understand who what their choices are going to be come 2026. Let them know you better still.
Sure.
When you're not thinking about education,
Yes.
when you're not just kicking around the bay. What is it that you're doing with your free time? Are you curling up with a book? Are you out there? We were talking about Kobe a second ago. Are you shooting hoops? Because you said that Kobe shot hoops in your backyard.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
talk
did.
to me about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Free time? What's that?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm honored to have this great job. It can be all-consuming. When there's a little bit of time, that's time to be with family. I'm honored to spend time, with my fiance and my two daughters. I have two grown daughters who grew up in the public schools, and they're incredible. I love sports of all kinds, and chance to watch a movie and binge to something good. But most of my time is spent doing things in support of our state, in support of our schools. And I get to go to so many schools, read with kids, and talk to them about how I got into my career. I'm hoping that we can do things that will unlock the future for them, to help them find their potential. And of course, we have so much beauty in this state.
Yeah.
I love to travel it. We get lots of hikes in. I'm always glad to be at any of our beaches, anywhere along our coastlines. To take in the natural beauty that we have in this state is truly a gift.
There's a clear through line in your service, through your career, politically and in general, and you talk about it so well with the next generation in education. And you talk about sports. I mean, you're a Bay Area guy, so we won't talk about Dodgers Giants. We're just going to leave it without any more debate. But that'll be for the next time. Great getting to know you a little better. Thanks for coming in. Much more to go. And congratulations on the road to 2026.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.